What's up, everyone? Tara Roberts here with 4 for 4, and it is time to beat the waiver wire. It is the fantasy playoffs. Maybe some of you have one more week left, but for the majority of us, it is playoff time. You're focused on moves that can give you the win because there is no tomorrow. We want to win now. Who are we stashing? What strategies are we taking? We are focusing on youth, running backs, and defenses this week. Before we get started, remember to like this video and subscribe. And if you want more fantasy insights and tips, head over to 4for4.com/plans and sign up for a subscription today. And exclusively for our YouTube audience, use promo code YouTube at checkout to save 25%. Now let's go ahead and dive right in. We're going to start off with Quentin Johnston. This one is going to make you uncomfortable, but hear me out. After spending the entire season looking like a complete bust, having zero upside, and making basic mistakes and drops to the point where your coach simply opted to bench you, Quentin Johnston is on a mini hot streak here. It is 10.2 fantasy points in PPR in week 13 with 5 receptions on 7 targets for 52 yards. Okay, all right. And then 12.1 fantasy points in week 14 with 3 receptions on 4 targets for 91 yards. Okay, it's not much, but it's something. And visually, he does look like things are clicking just a little bit better. You might also be wondering if that progress is going to take a nosedive with Justin Herbert set to miss the rest of the season. Not necessarily. Johnston spent the most of preseason and early season operating as the wide receiver 4. Even after Mike Williams went down, Johnston was playing behind Josh Palmer and was the wide receiver 3 at best. That means that he wasn't always running with the ones in practice. So who was he running with? More than likely, he has an existing rapport with Easton Stick. It's not unusual to see a backup quarterback favor some different targets because of who he's typically been working with. This is definitely a long shot, but it is worth an ad to see what happens here. In week 15, the Chargers face the Raiders. The Raiders are an interesting matchup. Not very weak, but you can have a decent game against them. If Johnston has a strong game, I wouldn't be opposed to streaming him in deep leagues in his week 16 and week 17 matchups. Moving on to the next player, D'Onta Foreman. I firmly believe that D'Onta Foreman is the Bears' RB1, and he is my top waiver wire ad of the week, period. But Foreman's week 14 performance might not have your league mates racing to the waiver wire this week after a 9.2 fantasy point performance with just 11 carries for 50 yards and 2 receptions for 22 yards. Your league mates might not believe in him. They might hate his week 15 matchup and want another prove-it game before they invest in him. But you are thinking ahead. You don't need more proof. You know that he's the RB1 and you can grab him now. When Khalil Herbert got hurt, Foreman was the RB1 over Roschon Johnson weeks 6 through 10. When Herbert returned in week 11, Foreman started the game still as the lead back, and he got the goal line touchdown before he got injured. Foreman returned from his injury in week 14, and while it wasn't fancy, he yet again was the clear RB1. Again, 11 carries for 50 yards, 2 receptions for 22 yards. Khalil Herbert had just 3 carries for 8 yards. Roschon Johnson had just 1 carry for 6 yards. I'm honestly not sure how many games we need to see before we say Foreman is the Bears' RB1. For me, I've seen more than enough. You might not start Foreman this week, and that's understandable. Cleveland's defense has been a bit sketchy recently, but they're still one of the stronger defenses in the NFL. But here is why you are grabbing him now and you are stashing him even though you aren't starting him this week. Week 16 is against Arizona. Arizona is a dream matchup for opposing running backs. I would absolutely start him in week 16 and let him carry me to the championship game. Moving on to the next player, it is Rico Dowdle. If there is a running back that you want to roster for a league-winning handcuff, it is Rico Dowdle. For as much as we've been frustrated with Tony Pollard, he's RB10 overall in PPR and RB17 in average points per game. And while that is definitely disappointing for where we drafted him, for an actual running back usage, he's been solid, and his handcuff offers that same upside, but more. Because if Pollard goes down, Dowdle doesn't have to deal with Dowdle, right? He'd be a 3-down back with goal line work and receiving upside. Dowdle had 12 carries for 46 yards and a touchdown on Sunday. It's not consistent, but he's had multiple double-digit fantasy point performances over the past 4 games. This is the exact type of running back that you want to roster heading into the playoffs. Moving on to some defenses here. Grab a streaming option now, because if you have been streaming defenses, week 16 is a weird one. And there's not a lot of options for low roster defenses facing really bad offenses. There's not those layup matchups. But Denver is oddly low roster considering how steady they have been throughout the season. But sometimes people panic over bad matchups, and Detroit's schedule has definitely been less than ideal. And since Denver plays Detroit this week, no one will be looking to add them. But you're thinking ahead. And what's ahead in week 16? New England. Don't let one good Bailey Zappi performance fool you. New England is bad. They are an excellent matchup. And after that, Denver gets a matchup with the Chargers led by Easton Stick. Another fantastic streaming option. Grab Denver now. Hold, don't start this week. Play through the remainder of the season. If you can't grab Denver, you can take a chance on Seattle. Seattle is facing Tennessee and is very streamable. Will Levis burst onto the scene with his epic 4-touchdown game against Atlanta's defense that is typically stingy against the pass. But since that 4-touchdown game, Levis has had a total of 4 touchdowns. And putting that first start aside, Levis has personally turned the ball over in every single game outside of the game against Carolina, who oddly enough has had the fewest turnovers in the NFL. So even if he has a strong game like the one that he had against Miami, the opposing defense still has a good game. That wraps things up. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like the video and comment below. And if you want more fantasy insights and tips, head over to 4for4.com/plans and sign up for a subscription today. And exclusively for our YouTube audience, use promo code YouTube at checkout to save 25%.